So, I mean, just think about if you got to make the choice between care for your mom, care for yourself,
Wow.
care for your kids, right? Most people in that situation, they're going to pick the two sides of the sandwich first.
Wow.
And that's part of what I try to help people with is understand like.
So every day families are faced with the rising concern of healthcare costs and how do they take care of their loved ones. From assisted living to healthcare at home, the price of caring for our loved ones is quickly becoming a huge issue. It's no longer just a financial burden, it's also an emotional burden. For years, the affordability of healthcare has been a pressing issue.
Healthcare.
The cost of caregiving.
Yet here we are, with families still feeling the squeeze, especially those in the sandwich generation.
Part of the sandwich generation.
Called sandwich generation. Sandwich generation.
People being caught in the middle, caring for aging parents while raising their kids, taking them to Chuck E. Cheese and such. How do we prepare for these growing costs while also trying to take care of our loved ones? And how do we balance and juggle it all? Well, I got a good friend of mine. His name is Albert Bryant. He's a financial advisor, and he's going to talk to us on this episode of Charlin Care Pods about how to navigate different insurances, healthcare costs, and also support the sandwich generation that we're talking about. Albert brings invaluable insight, and he can help you and your family navigate these complexities. So I'm excited to hang out and chat with my good friend, but also it's going to be a great opportunity to give you guys information on this healthcare world that we live in and how to tackle it from the financial aspect. So.
I don't know, man. You don't always get a chance to like explain what you're doing or like educate.
Yeah.
And I think it's hard to find people like I don't walk along the street or where I'm going like, oh hey, let me tell you about financial planning.
Well, actually, tell us about it. Tell us about what you do.
So probably like in the simplest terms is I help people identify like an ideal destination where they want to be financially, why they want to get there, then take an inventory of where they are and the steps that it's going to take to get there. And in its simplest terms, I try to help you get from point A to point B.
That's
financially. Cool. It's not a lot more glamorous than that. Like there's a lot of variables and things that can go into it, but for the most part,
A to B.
Yeah, you're trying to get from A to B, and the more clarity, the better. Probably also the more experienced your guide, the more specialties they have, the more understanding they have, more likely the more effective, right? I try to stay away from adjectives like better because that's subjective, right? There are going to be some things that are a little more quantitative and objective, but journeys are a little bit more subjective.
Yeah, everyone's journey, everyone's goals are very, very different.
Right.
And so like working with that financial advisor, their job is to come and meet them where they are. That's cool.
It's not impossible, but it's going to be difficult for an advisor or a planner to apply the same thing over and over and over and over again, because
so different.
People are either in a different time or place. There's always at least some nuance that requires a little bit of a different wrinkle in application.
What do you most enjoy about being a financial advisor? What are some things that you just like thoroughly enjoy? Just curious.
Stuff like this.
Yeah.
It's gonna sound corny. It's not just because I'm here, right? It's but the connection and the relationships is. And I'm actually finding out more about life, right? Like I got goals outside of just my professional ones, and as I get closer to them, it's not the milestones and the destination,
it's the people
that I even really can remember. It's not even that they're not as important. There's certain stuff that I've done, like I remember thinking like, oh, I can't wait to get to that. been there, done that. Barely remember it, but I do remember the people that I did it with. I remember the people that I worked with to get to that point.
That's true.
And financial plan is not that. It's actually the same thing. I remember the time that I spend with my clients. I remember the times when I'm able to say, hey, remember that goal that you set?
Get it.
You're here. You made it. And I like being able to put the spotlight back on them, right? I like being able to say, like, because they'll be like, we, and I'm like, no, this is your money.
This is your effort.
This is your money. This is your plan. Like, you know, I gave you recommendations, but at the end of the day, you executed. You ran.
That's
so
cool.
I like that.
That's awesome. Now, we were talking, and I was like, you know, one of the things that you know, healthcare is probably one of the most expensive. We talked about a lot. It's so expensive, right? And so one of the things that we were talking about was like, man, we need to figure out a way to educate people, you know, when it comes to that sandwich generation. Right. But most people don't even know what the sandwich generation is. But if you would like, I'd love for you to talk about like, what is that sandwich generation, and what are some of the things that they face when it comes to financial stresses?
Yeah. I'm going to try to start from the last part and go backwards. I said sandwich so many times.
Yeah, sandwich, man.
It's like,
hungry.
Getting close to dinner time.
I know, right? I'm hungry.
Hopefully the mic doesn't pick up my stomach growling, but you know.
Right.
No, sandwich generation basically refers to somebody, and I think I did look up this. I forgot who, but I think it was the University of Michigan put a study out that said roughly somewhere around 23% of adults are in that sandwich generation, and they defined it as dependents younger than 18 at the home, while you're providing care for an elderly family member or just an elderly person also in the home. So
22% is a lot of people.
It's high. It was and I was surprised to see that. So if that's wrong, you're gonna have to cut that.
But still,
have to cut that out the podcast. But
2015 is still high.
Yeah, but no, I think it's just that's the definition, and yeah, I think that's out there. If it's not, then we'll come back and voice over.
Yeah.
But the stresses that you mentioned are like they're real, right? Because and this is probably another thing I like about my industry, or what we get to do, is you get to deal with like the numbers. Cool, fine. The numbers, you don't have to be a math genius or even expert or even like above average. You need to be able to do it. The math's kind of almost on its own. You can get help with it and all that other stuff. It's really like the psychological and the behaviors and the mindsets that help people achieve their goals or solve problems.
Wow.
So similar for the sandwich generation, a lot of times there's cultural influence that goes into that. There's historical influence that goes into it. So some cultures, like, it's your pleasure as the kid to take care of me, the adult that provided everything for you and sacrificed for you, right? That got you the opportunities that you had. So sometimes a kid might feel culturally
inclined.
I don't have a choice. Not inclined.
Yeah.
I have to do this. This is the way it's supposed to go. Sometimes they feel like just an obligation. They recognize that this person gave them everything they had, right? That's on the top side of the sandwich, right? Of course, the person providing is in the middle, the peanut butter and jelly. And the other piece of bread is these kids that I'm raising up, right?
True.
You there's so many options out there, right? And there's just a lot more out there to potentially put your kids in, right? The stress becomes, it's probably not as difficult when it's more or less regular. When your kids don't have special needs. When your parents are still, ambulatory, relatively healthy. They're just retired and out of their working years, right? What really tends to add stress is when now my parent needs advanced care. They need skilled care. They potentially, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Right? I can't work, take care of them, and take care of my kids. Like, something has to give. And that's usually where the stress comes in.
Wow. And the sandwich also feels like pressure.
Right. I mean, it's an apt,
Yeah.
it's an apt analogy and label for it.
Mm.
So, I mean, just think about if you got to make the choice between care for your mom, care for yourself,
Wow.
care for your kids, right? Most people in that situation, they're going to pick the two sides of the sandwich first.
Wow.
And that's part of what I try to help people with is understand like sandwich generation kind of refers to a snapshot, but it kind of misses the point if that's all you think about. Because if you think about what we just said, if the person you're going to more or less neglect is that middle part, the meat of the sandwich or the peanut butter jelly in the sandwich, then eventually you rise up to be the next part of the sandwich for your kids because you couldn't or didn't take care of yourself, put away for yourself, save up for yourself. Now, as you get older,
it cycled.
they continue the same thing.
Oh man, that's crazy. That's really true.
So it's sandwich generation is a good description, but it is incomplete because it doesn't really capture the downward momentum that you have with that situation.
So we're really thinking about a sandwich truly as we are. The person is the meat.
Right, yeah.
And the kids are the bread.
Right.
The adults are the other bread.
Right.
And so if you're not taking care of the meat,
then the sandwich is going to keep rolling downhill.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
And that's part of, and so that's one of the things that I really enjoy about helping people is you can, it's like if you're watching, like you're a soccer. Is it okay if I call it soccer?
Yeah.
I need to call
football.
it football. Yeah. I got to call it football?
Yeah.
Okay.
Soccer is fine. It's okay. We're in America.
Real football. You're a real football player.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you're on the pitch, you see things a certain way, but you can't see them from that bird's eye blimp view.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we get to be able to do is take that helicopter up a few levels and look down and give you that more
bird's eye
complete,
view.
Bird's eye view, and maybe look at, hey, here's what might be coming. Here's what you may want to prepare for, and help people with that.
How do you now let's roll back. Let's see, we're talking about the meat in the middle of the sandwich, right? How do you help someone where they're not even in that specific space prepare? So let's maybe talk about two different types of people. First is they're not there yet. What can they do now in terms of just preparing, getting their mind ready for that? And the second person is they're in it.
Right.
Like, what do they do?
Stuff is real.
Yeah, stuff is
right
real.
now.
Like, what do they do right now? They're in it. Their parents just fell, and they need to figure out an assisted living facility, and we can kind of go into that later. But those are the two people I'd like to see if we can help in this conversation.
Absolutely. I'll take the first one first. So there's a saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? Another way is like, stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what they may want to look at. They may want to talk to, their financial professional and find out like, hey, what are some tools? What are some things that we can do to see this risk, see this possibility down the line and do something to potentially mitigate it, right? So there's numerous like products and things out there and different ways to put them together that are probably a little too in-depth for our conversation here, but there are products out there and systems that you can put in place that when that event happens, and I think the research is like 1 in 3 adults over 65 are going to have a long-term care situation, basically that affects their ability to move around, dress themselves, toilet, feed themselves, transfer from place to place, or some type of cognitive disability. It's about 1 in 3, right? 1 in 3 things that it might happen.
It's very
right?
true.
Okay. So high odds, right? Or higher than comfortable odds, right?
It's more likely than.
Right. So if that's the case, and those episodes tend to last at least 3 months, they can last, years, they can end in their death, right? But it's probably going to be at least 3 months, maybe a little bit longer than that, right? So if you got something that has those odds of happening, then you may want to look at ways to say, okay, if this happens, then I have this plan to address it.
Yeah.
So that's the first people.
Wow.
Second people, when you're in it, it really kind of goes back to what I was saying before, that point A to point B. Where do I want to go? Like if I'm here now, like I'm taking care of my dad. He can't really move around on his own. He doesn't really know who I am. I am not available, nor do I have the skills to take care of him. And I got my kids, and I have myself.
Yeah. Then
the first step is, all right, where are you really trying to go? Like, what do you want to accomplish? Then the next one is, all right, where are you? Like, what are the gaps? And then developing a step-by-step plan to get from one place to the other. And the hard part is, the hardest conversations that I have are when the resources aren't there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So then you're talking about, all right, I got to figure out, where do I not put, like, where do I say, all right, I just can't put it there. Like, I can't put money on this. I can't spend time on that. I can't spend money. And working with somebody through that,
it's tough.
It's hard, but I think it's also helpful because it can kind of help cut down on the hindsight bias of the, if only I would have known that this was available, or if only I would have known that I might have been able to do this. And that's I think sometimes that's where the value of a trusted advisor can come into play.
It's funny that you said that because when we deal with patients and seniors and everything, and I always you learn so much from those who've lived life. Right. And
you realize how wise they are.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And so one of the things that
start to get older.
Yeah, I'm like, wow. And one of the things that I don't know where it is. I think it's a proverb, but it's like it talks about being young is a gift, right? It's truly is a gift. And I think right now that the generation, we've got, I don't even know the names of them, millennials.
I know them.
All right. So, what do they call it? Millennials.
So the greatest generation. There's still some greatest left. Boomers, Xers, millennials, Zers, and I guess whatever's after Alpha. So just went around.
So we just went back to the top.
Back to the top.
I think your kids are Alpha.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think my kids.
Wow.
Are
so I think I'm gonna go home and call it. I know Alpha. Hey, Alpha. I think about the different generations, right? You think about the different generations and how each generation planned financially, right? I think right now, the microwave generations, it's kind of a huge, from the baby boomers all the way up. Everything is instant. Everything is now. But I think dealing with patients and dealing with seniors, I think that's kind of what you were talking about. That first person is, how do you plan effectively now? Right. And a small amount of that, you could do small things that can actually make a big difference down the road. And I think a lot of times the practicality of it is not, like, instead of getting Starbucks,
right.
There's or what do you think? Like,
I think too. The other part is that there's kind of a sweet spot when it comes to like recognizing your own mortality, and it takes some time for it to wear off on you that you're not invincible, right? For most people, it happens around in their 40s, maybe a little later, but they start to realize, oh yeah, I'm not as I used to be, right? So kind of catching people at that time, that's one thing. Two, a barrier to working with somebody like myself, usually, as I've talked to some of our clients, is when I have enough money, I will
X, Y, Z.
Right. So I'll work with a planner, I'll work with an advisor when I have enough money. And that thinking sometimes tends to delay people doing anything. And the cool thing about where we are now, like in human history, is there's so many technological resources that can help you find good answers.
Good answers
right?
quickly.
Yeah, very quickly.
YouTube.
Curate the content. You can and get something that can at least help you take some initial steps. So that's really cool. But perspective is usually perspective and experience is usually the best tool that I have to helping people be proactive, especially if they've gone through it, if they've seen it. So grandmother, mother, father, spouse, right? Experience,
proximity.
Yeah, and you see like I personally know what it's like to have a parent die without a will, so intestate, right? It takes a long time to unwind that and get it out of the court system, right? So it was very important to me to go get my estate planning documents in order, right? And so similarly, when it comes to the sandwich generation and some of the things that you can do to make that, to kind of mitigate the risk, it helps and hurts, right? It hurts because you've gone through the experience, but it helps because you know what it's like, and you have an idea of what you're guarding against if you take these steps.
Man, what are, that's a good point, because I think one of the things that I was just thinking when you said that was like, when we are risk and mitigation, we talked about this earlier, like, what does it mean to like mitigate risk? If someone's looking at like, okay, insurance, or like, how do they protect themselves? What are some ways that like, what does that mean?
Right. So mitigate, I guess, and I forget, like I'm probably supposed to know this definition code, but I don't. But usually when you're talking mitigate, you're talking like make something not as bad, or like lessen the effect of it, right? But really with insurance, you're usually talking about transfer of risk. So when it comes to risk, you usually have options, right? So like, this is a nice office, like nice setup, right? So one of the risks that you have is something happening to this building, like a fire or something like that, right? Well, you could avoid that by not having an office, or not having anybody come in here, or not having anything in here. Like, just avoid it altogether, right? That's one way to do it. Another way is you limit it. You say, look, we're only coming to the office on Mondays from like 8 to 5, right? That's it. One day.
Limited exposure.
Right, yeah, limited people. Yeah, you limit the exposure, right? So you try and make it so, like, no matter what happens, if the risk occurs, like, it's not going to, or if the damage occurs, if the actual cause of loss happens, then it won't be as bad. Or you can say, you know what, things have been going pretty well here. I got plenty of money in the bank. If the whole thing goes up in flames, I'll just replace it. That's called retaining the risk. That's called like self-insurance, right? Like, I just got it. Okay. Or you could go to somebody, you can go to an insurance company or somebody like that and say, hey, you know what? I would like to put the burden on you. And they say, okay, for this amount, usually called your premium, I will take on the risk of your building burning down. And if it does happen, then I'll repair it according to the contract that we have. And, that's when you get into your co-insurance and all that other stuff. But basically, all of it is basically in exchange for coverage in case this happens according to what they write in there. You get that insurance. So if you take that back to long-term care, that's usually the insurance that people use to mitigate the risk that as I get older, I'll lose the ability to do some of the activities of daily living, like transferring, like bathing, like dressing myself, like going to the bathroom, like or having like a cognitive episode where I can't take care of myself.
What let me cut you off. When we talk about long-term care insurance, what can you generalize it for us as, like, what does it look like for someone like is actually going to like utilize long-term care insurance?
Sure. So the definition usually for long-term care is 2 of the, I believe it's 6 activities of daily living you're no longer able to do. And like I said, the odds are, I believe, 1 in 3 adults over 65 at least have one episode that lasts a couple of months or more, right? So long-term care insurance is gonna trigger when you have that combination, and I believe sometimes just one cognitive episode where you kind of lose some cognitive or enough cognitive ability to function can also trigger it, right? So usually you need two of the activities, the ADL, or one cover cognitive loss, right? And then they're going to kick in. Probably to explain it, we got to start talking about the types of care, which I probably have to ask you. Right? So if somebody needs home health care or skilled nursing care, what are their options?
So usually it's the insurance route, like we were talking about, mitigating risk. So you could go the long-term care insurance route, or you could go the actual Medicare Advantage skilled care route, right? So with that route, you're going to be utilizing your Medicare Advantage plans, your skilled services to provide that care. When you're going for that non-skilled care, so that's like ADLs, assisted living facilities, then that's where that long-term care insurance, where they're paying down X amount of dollars every month to actually take care of the loved one. So what we see a lot is, we're contracted with Medicare, and so we take care of patients who have those traditional types of main insurances, main carriers, and then we go in the homes and take care of them through the doctor's orders and such.
Right.
But yeah, that's interesting, because the long-term care insurance side can also be triggered if they have that option, if they have that relationship to pay it down and plan for it.
And so that's one of the other things too, right? Is to have a nurse or somebody that can provide that care come to your house. It costs a certain level, right? To go to a nursing home, costs another level. To go to a nursing home and have your own private room costs a whole nother level, right? And so those costs are generally rising as we look to the future. Right now, I think in where we are here in Collin County, it's probably around $120,000 to $150,000 a year for a private room at a nursing home facility, right? You take that, you project that 20, 25 years down the road, it could be north of $350,000, right? That's at like 2 to 3% inflation. So you can see that if you need that type of care for a long time, it can be cost prohibitive.
It can be,
right? Like you might not.
You don't want to retain that. You want to transfer that,
right? And let's say that you actually have that in your portfolio. Is that how you want to allocate those funds?
Right? Especially when you're considering your kids or your parents. Like, how do you do that?
Right. And so you probably want to think about it, or you may want to look at it in terms of the trade-offs, right? If this happens and I have to use it that way, how does it affect my other goals?
Wow.
Right? Like if I had wealth transfer goals, if I had estate planning like needs or anything like that, if I had if this episode is going to end, like I'm going to be able to get out of the long-term care situation, do I still have enough to get me to the finish line?
Wow.
Right? That's another thing that's making this issue harder, right? Is we're living a lot longer. Right? And so you might have an ADL episode or something like that early in your senior years.
And you may exhaust through it all.
And you might burn through your retirement savings.
Wow.
But you still got another 10, 15, possibly 20 years to live. So now what?
Wow. So that long-term care insurance is massive when it comes to potential
planning.
Could be,
right? Like I said before, I can't say for sure because I'm not talking to every person in the audience. Like, don't know their situation intimately to be able to give those recommendations, but it could be a very effective
tool.
Yes, to protect you or to help mitigate the damage from a risk happening.
Wow. What are the different types of, I like how you said tools.
What
are the different types of tools that a financial advisor uses to get someone from A to B? I guess, is that tailored or is it too?
I probably don't have enough time to take long, but
the main tools.
Yeah, some basic ones, and I'll say some basic. So there can be some basic tools, but there also can be some basic like systems or processes.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So most of the time, they're gonna use some type of fact finder, either schedule of questions or like form for you to fill out, or something that helps them understand
Baseline.
where you are, where you're trying to get, what your inventory is.
Okay.
Right. That's kind of and that can vary from like fillable forms. That can be it could be like an Excel spreadsheet. It could be like a fillable PDF, like whatever. Or it could be like an in-person interview. Right. I personally like the interview because it allows me to. I know what information I want and almost kind of absolutely have to get. Yeah. But then it also allows for like the in-person communication together, and it allows me to get a feel for the person. And so so they're probably going to use something like that. Then kind of, I'm not gonna say MacGyver, but similar. Like he just used to use whatever he saw like laying around. Like, so a lot of times they're gonna use what they see in your in your personal life. So, and it's stuff that you might not always see as a financial planning tool, but sometimes we're gonna look at your tax returns, right? And be able to say, okay, like how are you doing that? They're going to look at estate planning documents that you have in place, so wills, trust, powers of attorneys, and things like directives to physicians, stuff like that. We're going to look at your financial statements, like what do you have, and they're going to, well, not always, but they may ask you to use to do a budget or cash flow statement, right? Probably going to look at your compensation package from your employer, right? Or if you're in your business, like look at cash flow statements and what you pay yourself as a business owner. Look at things like a qualified plan if you're eligible, or if you're participating, or if you're sponsoring one as an employer or business owner. What are the details there? Yeah. Because you tweak something on the machine over here. Yeah. You don't necessarily see the effect that it has on the down the road production, both in terms of time and in terms of like even in space, right? Like you do something, it could have an effect. For instance, you decrease your contribution to your employer sponsored like profit sharing plan or 401k. Well, that same year you might be increasing your reportable, like you might be increasing your tax base. Yeah, because of that. Less of a deduction, right? That's same year, right? Or down the road, it has an effect because you accumulated less because you stopped putting in as much. Wow. Right? So it's those snowballs effect. Yeah. So there's tons of technology out there, right? Wow. I can't even start to name. There's tons of like planning software, things that we can use for looking into like what types of investments and stuff to look into. Those tools are probably in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Yeah. And they're all out there. Wow, man. I feel like I was just in class. I don't even know if I answered your question. No, it was perfect. But yeah, I would probably say that it, rather than talk about like the specific things that like because everybody does it differently. True. Right? And it's kind of like art and science at the same time. I'm just gonna say like there's probably some common things that you'll run into, which is basically trying to find out where you want to go, what do you have to work with to get there, and why is it important to you in the first place. Wow. What are some of the you mentioned this a little bit earlier, what are some of the clients, you call them clients? Yeah. Clients, patients. I guess I could call them patients. I'd probably be weird. But in terms of your clients, what are some of the things that you see that make for someone to get from point A to point B really well? Like, what are some things that you say, oh, this client really got it? What are some of the attributes, some of the things that you've seen that like they really are able to establish a goal? Say, for instance, they listen to this podcast and they're like, man, Albert said some great things. Yeah, no, Albert said some great things. Yeah. I really, after watching this, I really want to consider, doing something to kind of help me to mitigate my risk if I get there down the road.
What are some things you see?
Basically, are you asking like what are some common characteristics some of people who achieve their goals?
Yeah, when it comes to finance, in some situations like this.
Sure. The thing I've seen most common is mindset, and like discipline.
Wow.
It's I guess the combination of discipline and persistence.
Wow.
These things they take time. So that's I mean it's gonna sound bad, right? But those you hear people's like, oh, if you save $100 a day, if you start, I mean not a day, you can be a baller.
That's amazing.
Right? That's a lot. But if you save like $100 a month or $50 a month, and you start that when you're 18, like you're gonna have such and such, you know, however millions.
Yeah, we see those all the time.
Right? They're not lying. That's like compounding interest over like a 20, 30, 40-year period.
That's amazing.
That's amazing things, right? I put it on you. What's the problem? Why does that not happen?
Consistency.
Right?
Like
it's not because people don't hear it.
Yeah.
It's not
or action. Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's not
follow through.
It's not exactly. It's not because it would be the same thing like I'll kind of so like I'm about to turn 40, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know why I thought that this wouldn't happen to me. Probably the same reason people don't think others is gonna happen. But like I could eat like a bowl of ice cream every night for like a week. And I used to be able to do that and wouldn't be able to look in the mirror and tell the difference.
Yeah.
Now if I do that, you're like,
what happened?
Hold myself together. Can't go out like this.
Right. I felt it in my back.
Why are my pants so tight?
So
I think for lack of a better term, and it's gonna sound kind of harsh, but people think the rules don't apply to them.
Wow,
That's really good. Like they can more or less do what they want to do, and things still turn out the way that they want them to, right? So, the thing that I've noticed the most about people clients who other people, when they hear about these clients' story, they want to know, hey, what did they do? Like we had a lady, she retired when she was 50 years old, and people knew her.
Wow.
And they were like, how did she do that?
Yeah.
And they would ask us.
Yeah.
And I would be like, look, man, her discipline
and
adherence to the plan was the best I've ever seen.
Wow.
Like she had like a target determined focus. She never wavered. She was like Deuteronomy. Like don't turn to the right, don't to the left. Like it was straight.
Wow.
And she got there. And that's why, but that's what I said before.
Yeah.
It wasn't us. Like, did we give guidance? Did we do, did we give her guidance? Did we help her make decisions? Did we offer recommendations? Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Did she have some wild hairs that we're like, like maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it was her vision. It was, okay, point A, point B. Where did she want to go? Why did she want to get there? What did she have to work with? And how could we help her navigate? But I mean, shoot, we were all in school. Wow. Like, if you don't listen to what the teachers is being taught or being instructed or don't apply it, you're not gonna be an expert in that field, or you're not gonna succeed in that field.
That's true.
You might do something else, or you might get it later. But you're just gonna get it later, as opposed to maybe you could.
Wow, man, that's really encouraging. I think for a lot of people too. It's like it doesn't take, is like you said before, someone doesn't have to be brilliant.
No, you don't.
To actually put in the work.
I would say it's those two. Those would be the two main things: discipline and I said persistence, but it's probably perseverance too, right? Because it's a little bit more than just I can do the same thing over and over and over again, or I can go to the gym every day.
Yeah,
right? It's a little bit more than that, because there's gonna be resistance.
Yeah.
Right? There's gonna be,
you gotta push.
There's gonna be times where, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't feel like doing this anymore. And on top of that, I can't even tell if it's working.
Woo.
Right? And so then you're gonna have, those are the people who can continue to go forward with that
without seeing the results.
Yeah.
They're not really focused on like what's happening
Right.
right now. They're like,
Because they know it's gonna pay off. Like the athlete that
Yeah.
goes every day. You know, they know they put in the work day after day, time after time. They know the game is gonna repay them. They know the game is gonna give them back what they put in, even more than what they
right. put in. Yeah, that's true.
I'm not super original. Like my
Yeah.
friends tell me all
Yeah,
this, and
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like regurgitating. So if my friends are watching, they're like, I'll put you in the credits. But one of them, he says, you reap
More than
greater than you sow,
Yeah.
later than you sow, in ways that you don't even imagine. So you don't even really get to pick the consequences of your action.
Wow.
You just reap what you
What you
sow,
sow.
and you reap it in a much large. It's literally like seeds.
Wow.
Seeds are like, if I had like a pound of seeds,
Yeah.
I fit in my hand.
Yeah.
Throw it out there. Some of those are gonna end up being huge trees, right? Exponentially larger than what I sowed.
Yeah. Smaller.
Yeah,
Bigger.
and and financial stuff works pretty much the same way.
Man, what are some as we kind of wrap it up? What's some closing thoughts to kind of like?
No, we're wrapping it up.
No, I was
Let's just start. Let's just start having fun. Nah, man. Probably that would actually probably be it. Is this stuff is not nearly as like daunting or intimidating as like I'm a self-admitted kind of procrastinator. I wait till the end.
I think everybody is.
And I try and pull out some type of miracle.
Yeah.
11:59 when the papers do it.
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
Right? Or 11:58 when the papers due before midnight. Like,
True.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's sad that I actually know those.
Yeah.
But anyway, right? Like, so but usually if I get up against it and I find out, like, I'll find out, like, sometimes I actually like the project or like the task and wish I had more time.
Yeah.
Like, wish I could go back and work on it.
For more.
Using what I told myself is I made it into some monster. I made it into some type of scary thing.
That was bigger than what it was.
Bigger than what it was, harder than what it was, more cumbersome, more of a labor,
Challenge, yeah.
Right, than it was. I think financial planning and stuff
Same
like that
thing.
tends to be very similar. People think you need more money than you actually do. It's more like it's completely outside of what you can understand. And they put it off, until they can't. And now I gotta have somebody, because I have no idea kind of how to navigate this situation. And
they're in that sandwich position.
and they end up with pressure on both sides, looking for help, which we love to help you with.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying we don't do it, but a lot of times there's like this kind of sense like, man, I wish I started earlier, and usually it's the reason is you didn't think that. You put details on it
that really didn't need
that
to
really
be
didn't
there.
go there.
Yeah, and then that regret sits in.
Yeah.
Guilt.
We try to help you with that too. But like, we're not psychologists.
Or
We try to say, hey, like, look, man, that's the past. Let's move forward from where we are.
Yeah.
Like, you don't, because that's probably the biggest like anchor. Like, you asked me about probably the characteristics that will help you. Probably one of the things that hurts you the most is
guilt.
Yeah, guilt, living in the past. And
I didn't do this. I wish I would have done this. No,
because hindsight's 2020.
Can't do anything.
Nobody knew
that this would happen.
Exactly.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's true. It's true.
You run into somebody that's going to tell you that. You should be careful.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What y'all got? Questions y'all got?
Like, what are the most common like financial mistakes when people are, I guess, budgeting for healthcare, and like how can they avoid them?
When you say budgeting for healthcare, are you talking about
like planning? Yeah, if like something happens or just for the future.
Shoot. I take that from probably, again, mindset. I guess, how many times can I say mindset?
No, you made a really good point on that, like saving and starting early. It's just
that
like is engraved now.
That would be it, really. It would, because, again, what we tend to do, I don't even think this is unique to men, women, culture, age. We just tend to think it's not gonna happen to me. Like that's okay. I'll go back. I think for younger people, that tends to be the thinking. As we get older, we know certain things absolutely happen.
Like you're indestructible.
Right?
That's
Yeah.
gonna happen like
this
that.
is absolutely
It's
what's
gonna
about to
happen.
happen. Like I can look at my kids and be like, I'm gonna tell you how that's gonna go.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna keep making that decision, and in a couple of weeks we're gonna be having this conversation. I can like write it down and he's like, open this next month, and they're gonna be like, how'd you know? Right? Yeah. It's
January 2025.
How did you know that was? Yeah. So I think it's a similar. That's probably the biggest thing. It's usually not a. It's usually not a single action, right? It's usually not a single occurrence. John Maxwell says everything gets created twice.
Yes.
Right. So in your head, you have already designed your future, right? You've already figured out actions that you're gonna take, right? You've already kind of molded and been there, but you still got to walk it out and live it. Well, a lot of time what happens in that mental vision is you minimalize the probability something bad will happen, and you overestimate the probability that something good will happen.
Wow.
Like obstacles and stuff that
Yeah.
don't come
So
along
like
the way.
I'm a like when I forgot one of my personality traits is I'm a visionary. I'm very futuristic, right? There are not very many ideas that you can bring to me that I'll be like, that's not gonna happen. Like, yeah, come on, let's go. Like holler at me when you get like we up, right? And so I tend to kind of minimalize like the things that could happen for you to get there. I actually work with a few people that are the opposite. Like they are much more and I think as you build or get the people around you that are gonna help you like get there, you might want to look for a balance or people somebody that you can bounce stuff off of to be able to say, all right, you know me, I'm like a hopeless visionary, like help me be more grounded.
Like give like a
and
reality
practical.
check. of
Yes,
what's going
I
on.
need you to like tell me what I'm gonna have to go through to get there, and that's probably the thing that I would see people, and vice versa, right? You know, you can overdo it that way as well. I just particularly don't suffer from that.
That's a good point. That's really good.
This might also be basically what you said before, but just to get like a clear thing, what's like one piece of advice you would give to kids our age, knowing like kind of like how you're showing us on your phone, like in 30 years, it's gonna be crazy when it comes to healthcare.
22.
Yeah.
All right. I would say two things. The first one's easy. Think long term. Your actions usually have time has an amplifying effect on your systems and your habits, right? It probably the biggest like regret feeling that I have is when I can look back at actions or habits or systems that I have, like that I have right now, that I remember kind of when they started, and I can remember somebody saying like, you probably need to address that. Not addressing it, and now regretting the consequences or not being happy with the consequences, right? So first would be think long term, and then the second one is a little more, not nuanced, but like look at the trends. Like try to read trends. Try to just use your imagination. You don't have to be right, but just try to look at history, see what has developed. Like don't throw away what you've experienced already or what you've heard about, and try to connect the dots from that to now, and then try to extrapolate. So it's similar to think long term, but maybe it's like a way to do it is like consider the trends up to date, because nobody can predict the future, but you can work off of some assumptions or some educated guesses and put yourself in a decent position. Don't get too married to what, like when we were talking kind of before, there's some stuff that like I remember that you guys would like not. It's only from like your childhood, like when you're like really little. So there's gonna be stuff like that for you guys.
Yeah.
I would say don't be like afraid to. It's easier to ask questions now because the answers are more out there.
It's true,
right? I think you probably have to be a little bit more careful, to make sure that content that's getting curated or fed to you, like considering the sources and stuff like that.
True, because there's so much out there.
Right, there's so much out there, but there's so much that's helpful.
That's still
and
good.
There's so much that's
harmful.
You probably need to like filter that or like maybe not pay attention to
Where's
that.
the source?
Yeah, exactly. But you can get very educated about some top shelf, like kind of high level stuff
Pretty quickly.
Very quickly. Yeah. And you know, there's little snippets of learning, like LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I know on LinkedIn I get ads kind of all the time for different, like you can get whole courses from different schools.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And you never have to set foot on their campus or anything like that.
It's true.
So yeah, there's consistently evolving and making yourself better. And that's a little bit of a cliche, but if you got a passion or something that you're like that you really are excited about, I mean that rabbit hole is deep.
Deep, yeah. You can become a master. You can master it.
Yeah, you can really dive in. So yeah, I like that about kind of where we are right now, and I think that
sky's the limit for people when they if they want to learn something and master it. I feel like you can do that so quickly than you ever could in history. Yeah, like literally. Yeah, you could literally learn something in 100 days. Yeah, it's accelerated. The time it takes to close a learning gap is shorter. It's getting shorter and shorter. It's amazing.
Yeah, which I think so kind of talking about financial planning and financial advising, it puts more, I think it's going to put more emphasis on interpersonal relationships because
trust.
Now I need somebody that I think the consumer is going to need somebody that they can trust, is going to be honest with them when they don't know, right? Be honest with them when the information that the client is bringing them is something that they think like, hey, you might want to be careful. And they are knowledgeable themselves. Like if every time my client comes to me, I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Then that's gonna kind of diminish, or the client will start to think like, man, like, am I talking to the right person, right? So it puts the onus on the planner or the advisor to stay up, like, you know, stay current. But then also, you're gonna have to kind of differentiate yourself against the computers, right? Against the machines. That's true. Because a lot of the information that we learn, or you know, is gonna be readily available.
Wow.
But what's not gonna be as easy to duplicate is the connection.
True. Yeah.
Right? The connection that you build. And so I think that's one of the things that you might want to. That's probably going to become more and more of a differentiator because the information gap is going to get narrower and narrower.
Especially with AI, what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, so you're gonna have alternative and being able to understand what what the technology is doing, right? True. Because at least right now, it's not making its own decisions.
No,
right? I'm afraid of. I'm not
but
sure.
Not only that,
I'm not sure how it's going to look. If that
but not only that, but like it's not. I like how you said that it's the interpersonal relationships and it's the connections and the network, right? And like
all the above.
It's so much more.
But in addition to that, the technology is only doing what somebody told it to do. That's it, yeah. Right? So you still probably will need
100%
somebody to kind of explain, hey, this is what this is. It's taking the job of maybe 500 analysts, and condensing into some programs and algorithms, and an execution task.
Yeah.
But this is still what it's like. This is what it's doing.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's still going to be valuable.
Yeah. Man, that's it. Yeah. Experience is the best teacher, and
tends to be a good one.
Okay, I have one more question.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just to like be like I was just seeing with the trends and just to like personally I want to know. So do you know about like speculative investing? Some people talk about 401k versus that. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Sure. So let's see. I gotta remember how this works. So there's like a triangle that when you take your like licensing classes and stuff, they make you memorize. I forgot exactly how it goes, but like one corner is I think growth, another one is like preservation or security or maybe even income. And another one is like speculation, right? Usually, if somebody wants growth and income, they're moving towards this corner over here, the speculative side. Speculative. And usually growth is kind of like you're talking like the newer like kind of startup. They're not paying a whole bunch of dividends because they're keeping their earnings for things like research, product development, stuff like that, right? And usually income is a little more mature. You're talking maybe like your value stuff that's paying out like dividends consistently. Not a ton of value fluctuation up there. So, but over here in speculative, you might be able to get both, right? Okay. So typically speculative is not going to be appropriate for somebody that needs to preserve their income because you got the possibility or preserve the value of their investments. So you have the possibility of not getting any income and the value going down, right? Growth is going to be a little bit more it's going to usually be more suited for somebody that's looking for long-term capital appreciation or they're looking for the money that they put into that investment to grow over time. Typically that's going to be somebody with a little bit longer time horizon, somebody that can hang on for the fluctuations in the market because over the long haul, they like I think usually over 6-7 years the market is going to be positive. Not always, but the overwhelming history going back to the inception, going back to the inception of the market is you see a positive return over that time, right? So if that's the case, then speculative investments tend to not have a place in your qualified accounts like 401ks and things like that, because 401k for most people is a tool for later in life to address retirement, right? And the closer you get, the more you usually move away from growth and speculative towards preservation and income, because you are trying to make sure that what you have in there stays at that level that you need it to sustain your lifestyle and retirement. Time tends to give you a little bit more leeway for value fluctuations because you can hang in longer and allow it to recover, right? So speculative investments, I won't name them, but they just usually their qualities are like value fluctuation and things like that. Like you're not necessarily gonna be able to quote unquote depend on it to pay you the same thing over and over again. Does that answer your question?
No, it does, because I think it's like really trendy right now, or like it's on social media a lot. And I'm like, what is that? Because like they always compare those two.
Yeah. So another thing too, right, is so there's, and this I guess I don't know, this might be a whole nother topic, but good. when you look at the vast spectrum of investments out there are we'll do conservative over here, and then more risky or more aggressive over here, right? So speculative investments would just be over here on the conservative to aggressive side. Over here with very conservative are your like U.S. Treasuries and like your 10-year Treasury note and things like that. That's typically one of the safest things that you can like go to and find. But and then over here your speculative investments and things like that. So a lot of the things that make these a little bit more for the risk person that's willing to take on more risk, is sometimes there's less rules over here. There might be a little bit less regulation. There might be a little bit less consumer protection. There's because sometimes these investments don't have the reporting they don't always have the same reporting requirements. So as an investor, the onus is on you to look at it and determine
And monitor.
like can I do this, or is this investment going to do what it says it's going to do?
The risk is higher.
Tends to be a higher risk, and it tends to be and what you usually need to know over here is, well, actually this is everywhere on all spectrums, right? On all of them, investments involve the risk of loss, and not just loss of value, but like entire loss of principal. Principal being the amount that you put in, like the capital that you invested, right? The risk of that is usually less over here as you get to the conservative ones, but it's usually higher over here as you get to the speculative and more aggressive stuff, right? Over here, if say you put some money in like a treasury or something like that, and it lost all of its value, well, that means that the U.S. government cannot pay its debt and it's defaulted and is saying they're not going to pay you. We are in like a whole world of trouble or a whole world of hurt at that point. And you probably have bigger fish to fry at that point. You probably have more pressing needs than the value of your portfolio at that point.
Like the whole world.
We're in a state of change, like global change at that point.
Man, that's crazy. That's a really good question. I see that a lot too.
Yeah, and so that actually goes back to like information and like the information gap closing, right? So I can and I can't go on TikTok and say whatever I want to, right? Like I can, but then I'm regulated by certain authorities. They'll probably see it and be like, Albert, you can't say that, right? And I might, but you have certain people are not. So if you're not being monitored or if you're not being regulated, then you can kind of go out and say whatever you feel like saying, whatever you think you've learned or whatever you have learned, right? And so it's not, so you don't have the easiest way to be able to tell on some platforms what somebody's like license and credentials are to be able to say what you should or shouldn't be
like
doing.
on like Reddit and like threads like that, where people are just
So I'm
like,
not gonna name anybody. I can't say that. But
Right.
yeah, there's nothing stopping me, you, or anybody from going out there and saying whatever I want to say. Wow. Right? And to the person who like can't tell the difference, who knows what damage that does to them
Wow.
if they rely on that,
That information.
Yeah.
That's really bad.
I mean, well, it's one of the things that, that's part of, I guess, kind of bringing it full circle to like what we're doing here is hopefully some of the stuff that we talked about, some of the information that we put out there
It's helpful.
helps and points somebody in the right direction. Like that I like being able to do stuff like this because hopefully it hits somebody.
Oh yeah.
And like compels them to take action that helps them.
I think about that 50-year-old lady who retired.
Right. And so so if we can do that by what we're doing, and I probably same thing in the healthcare space for you, if what you're putting out here can help people, well then shoot. Like it's because
it's seeds.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
It's seeds and so.
And because that's another thing, right? Like you never really know who is gonna land on.
No,
I'm gonna say this. I'm gonna close my eyes. But when I was your age, I did not have an understanding of how powerful the momentum could be off of that little bit just over the next 10 years. Like,
just 10.
not to mention like
Just 10
from where
years.
you are to where I am now, but just for the next 10. If you're making enough, if you have margin, right? So if your income and everything is exceeding your living expenses and there's some left over, just understanding kind of how big you can get the snowball and how fast you can get it rolling downhill. Because the good thing about it is you can get things to a certain size and speed that you don't have to push it, right? It's the gravity will kind of take over and continue it going
Over
down.
and over and over.
And I don't know, this is not you didn't ask this question, but one of the things to look out for is the shortcuts, right? My biggest financial regret is believing somebody that said something that was too good to be true. It's true, right? And thinking I could take a shortcut. Usually what somebody that's kind of trying to fleece you or get you to give them something of value in exchange for them not giving you anything, they're usually going to hold out, hey, I can get it for you in a shorter time or without as much work, right? So they offer some pie in the sky return, right? Or something that maybe you don't know it like off top, but
Something
sits
in
in
you
your
is like,
gut,
it's
like,
only right.
Oh man, if that was the case, like
Everybody.
why is everybody not doing that?
Well, they say everything.
And there aren't in my experience, there aren't like secrets of the wealthy, or like there are things that people have done over time, but normally it still gets back to that persistence and discipline.
One day at a time.
It's rarely
One brick.
some like, hey, just use this product, or hey, just
It's like slow and
just do
steady
this
wins
one
the race.
method.
Like,
yeah. So yeah, that's something to be leery of. Anybody that tries to tell you something's too good to be true, or you can get kind of something for nothing, or something way faster than
the work you put in.
Without doing the work. Just ask more questions.
Man, this is good, bro. This is real good.
Thanks for having me.
Oh man.
Feel free to like and subscribe. Continue to watch our YouTube channel for great podcasts with local DFW healthcare practitioners. And we'll see you guys soon.